I'm Rad Tillett, born in Kitty Hawk. And grandfather and grandmother was here and also had two in Kitty Hawk. This is my wife, Margie.
I grew up in Kitty Hawk. Lost my dad in the Second World War, so we went to live with my granddaddy in Kitty Hawk Village. And my mom's mother died when she was 3 years old, and that was, her sister was Addie Tate that the Wright brothers stayed with until they got their camp set up. And so Rad and I have lived here mostly all of our lives.
It's not over yet.
Well, it isn't getting near, but it may be. My dad grew up in Buffalo City, and his dad was one of the Duval brothers that owned the mill, the sawmill back there, or lumber company. And he was there probably in Buffalo City until he was about probably 10 years old. And then my Duval family moved to Manio, over to Manio.
Okay.
And I stayed with my grandmama there in Manio quite a bit. After Dad was lost, I stayed with my grandmother all the time that I could, except when I had to go to school. My grandmother was a Tillett.
Okay.
And grew up here in Nags Woods. And if you go back far enough, we're probably related. If you go back far enough.
We just would come down weekends and spend nights or weekends with them. And we just fished and just hunted a little and just swimming. Well, it was just different. There weren't a lot of people to talk to. You just had family and friends, but it was just quieter time. And it was just an easier time to live, I thought. I still think that. So it was just a good time to be down here. The house was five bedrooms and living room and kitchen, larger kitchen. You did have no water pump. It was just one water hand pump in the kitchen and one hand pump on the porch. And that was the water system. There was no electricity. All the only lights we had at nights would be kerosene lamp. And cooked with a wood stove. Real hot in the summertime, my grandmother had a kerosene stove to cook on, but most time it was cooked with wood. That was just about year round. So that was kind of hot in the kitchen in the summer. And then she always had plenty to eat and didn't have no refrigerator. I never could figure out after I got older how they kept food from spoiling. But we had no refrigerator because we had no electricity. She had milk cows, so every morning my grandmother would milk the cow, so you had fresh milk then.
Yeah.
But then they used the milk when it was about a day old, or 2 days, I reckon.
Clabber.
Make clabber, and that put it in the biscuits. That made real good biscuits. And jelly. She made plenty of jelly. Grape jelly and fig jelly. So she always had plenty to eat. And in the smokehouse, she had pork in that, like ham and ribs and stuff that was dried in smokehouse. Yeah, but it was hard to grow things, but it was done.
Yeah, it was.
That's the way they had big garden, and it was plowed. My granddaddy plowed his by horse and plow. So it was right hard to have a garden that way, but he had a big one.
Everything
Did
was
we-
always fresh, right?
Everything was good, fresh. In the wintertime, the stuff would stay cool on the porch. Had screen cabinets on the porch.
Did you do any chores?
No, I was too little. I didn't like to milk cows. But that was my grandmother's job. She brought the milk in. But that was first thing was done early mornings. And then my granddaddy, he had a horse and cart that he traveled in. He did not drive. He didn't like vehicles, I don't think, because he didn't drive.
But Grandmama did.
Grandmother drove right fast. Everybody said they cleared the road when Mag come down the road. So I don't know. But that's what they said about her. But I think she was a good driver. She drove probably good as I could. We'd get stuck in the sand going to the beach with the car. Just about every time you'd have to push and try to get it out of the sand real soft. There was no grass on the beach.
No.
No grass and no
grass
trees.
anywhere on the beach.
No trees on the beach. It was just but the woods here was growed up, but we had a lot of land that was cleared to farm on, put vegetables and for the cattle to eat. We had chickens and ducks and turkey, had turkeys. And then the animals, we had pigs and sheep and horse ponies, beach ponies. It's like the Corolla horses and the Chincoteague horse, that's what they were. You know, we called them beach ponies, but they were right good size. Livestock was on the beach
They
till
ran free
the bridge was put in, and then they had the fencing law. Everything had to be fenced. But
What do people think about that fencing law?
well, it weren't very good. Yeah, but it had to be because there was
Yeah.
more people
Had to.
to do it. Yeah, then everybody fenced their house in instead of
Fence
it
around
was
their
fence
house.
around the house
Yeah.
instead of fence around the marsh.
Yeah. About the hurricane?
Hurricane. In September 1944, it took part of the roof off of the main house, and the top part of the chimney fell inside the house. So that was about all the damage done, but that was a bad storm. The houses on Nags Head, a lot of them was washed down, and a lot of them was washed on the road. It was a real bad hurricane.
Do you remember it?
Yes, I was, 744, I'd be, 8 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. I stayed in my grandmother's house, the Kitty Hawk, and it was just, the rain was just blowing through the windows, under the windows and under the doors. It was a bad time. I don't know how hard the wind blew, because the weather forecasters, they weren't like they are now.
No.
We didn't know it until it come.
We had
Had-
no warning because
No warning.
my family was living on the beach, on the ocean, and by the Kitty Hawk Coast Guard station. And the Coast Guard came during the night and knocked on our door and told us to get off the beach. The Coast Guard came and warned us. So we went back in Kitty Hawk Village, and when we went back home out on the beach, the sand was in our kitchen up to the sink. The window lights were broke out and the sand would come in and was up to the sink.
Nobody was hurt, but chimney did fall on my uncle's hat. He was kind of upset about that.
Well, hats were important back in that day, probably
Yeah.
more so than today.
Yeah, it was a raised hat, not a baseball cap, but
No.
a hat.
Like a hat?
Yeah.
Around a hat.
Why would
Yeah.
that hat simple?
Yeah. I don't know why they wore that kind of hat, because I always wear a baseball cap.
Well, everybody, all men used to wear hats, always.
No, I think people just lived better here than they did in the cities, in Depression, everybody made their own, whatever they needed. Like the food, people in Dare County, most of them had gardens and had livestock to eat, and it just was not as hard as it was in the cities and where you couldn't raise stuff.
But I think at that time during the war is when a lot of people left and they worked for the war effort. A lot of people around Dare County went to Norfolk and worked in the Navy base and
Shipyards.
I
Shipyards.
think that's when people started leaving
Yeah.
the beach.
My father went to Norfolk. We worked in the naval base during World War II. We stayed up there about 3 years till the war was over. And when it was 45, we come back to Kitty Hawk. But the old people, a lot of old people just stayed here the whole time, you know, and kept things going. You could see ships off burning in most nights, or a lot of nights you could. And then
We had to pull down our shades every night,
we had
blackout shades.
an army base up at Kitty Hawk. There was in a tower, a radar tower up there where the Catholic Church is today. It was an army base. And
We played down on the ocean a lot as kids, but it was hard because it was tar all over the beach. The beach was covered in tar.
Is that from the ships being sunk?
mhm,
And because Mama had when we come in off the beach, she had a pan of kerosene right by the back door, and you'd have to scrub the tar off of your feet if it was summertime, and it was really, really bad. It came from the freighters that were being sunk. They were headed for England full of oil.
but there was a lot of stuff washing up, even after the war, even up to 1950.
Yeah.
It was we'd go after a hard storm and pick up K rations and eat the chocolate bars
Yep.
out of them.
Oranges.
It was really good. Yeah, that was a treat to find a box that hadn't been opened.
Full of chocolate
Yeah.
bars.
Yeah. Okay, well, my grandfather, he died in 48, in the spring, I think 48. And my grandmother moved out. She moved to Kitty Hawk. She couldn't stay back here by herself, you know. And she broke her arm, couldn't drive her car no more. So that put an end to the fast driving on the road. But she couldn't stay here. Everybody was, you know, working and couldn't be with her all the time. So they didn't want her back here by herself. So I left nobody in the house, and it just deteriorated until and then it was sold. After it was sold, well, people just used it as a cottage, summer vacation or whatever. And then in the late 50s, we had a fellow running a gas station on the beach, Kitty Hawk, and he told my dad that the house had burned, his house had burned. He said he saw it burning down here and came down at night in a car and drove back here in the woods to see where it was, and it was my grandfather's house. It was burned to the ground, and that was the end of Tillett's house. Yeah, this was the last house. My grandmother was the last person to move out of Nags Head Woods, but she stayed as long as she could. And everybody seemed to work together. It was
Yeah, I think people, were
we were just family. Everybody,
a lot of
everybody-
love for one another, really, you know.
yeah,
They cared about each other, the
Yeah,
neighbors and all.
there was a lot of help. If you needed help, you could get it. Well, in the winter or the fall, they would have what they call hog killings, and all the families, there'd be 3 or 4 families would come to one house, and kill the hogs and cut up everything. All the meat be cut up and stored in a smokehouse or salted down. And it took a right many people to do that. And they just help each other in the garden when it was time to bring stuff in the fall. Well, they just helped each other. And it was
They
just,
did.
you could always get help if you need it.
Yep.
If you had to put a roof on a house, well, there was somebody to help you. So it was just a good time to be living.